Vishnu, and whenever um, there is demoniac um, disturbances, the demigods go to the shore of Shwetadeep and they pray to Vishnu um, to descend. And so my question is, if that planet is a spiritual planet, and by definition, spiritual world or a spiritual planet is um, a place where the devotees can interact with Krishna um, very personally and directly. But this spiritual planet within the material world seems like there is no direct association, um, and which looks like it is negating the definition of spiritual planet itself, because it's not allowing any direct association. At least we don't. At least I don't know whether Dhruv Maharaj is personally serving um, Vishnu, or what form of Vishnu is there that he's serving, and what kind of citizens. If it is a spiritual planet, all the citizens should be pure devotees, and they should be serving in one of the five rasas. So I'm not able to understand the spiritual planet within the material world when compared to spiritual planet in the spiritual world. If you can talk about this, Prabhu.
So I can talk about briefly. I think some of the points you're asking are things that I haven't heard so far from Prabhupada or read. But your initial description is correct, of course, that there's Dhruvaloka, there's Ksir Sagar and Shwetadweep there. The Devas, even though they enter into Dhruvaloka, they are still they're not pure devotees. So we can understand why they don't get personal association of Krishna, because mode of goodness. They're contaminated by the mode of goodness. Your other question of whether how does Dhruv Maharaj serve? So Dhruv Maharaj, obviously, he in the Bhagavatam it is clearly said that he ascended to the spiritual world. So he is not material, he's spiritual, and he is serving Krishna there. But details about how exactly he serves Krishna and who are his associates in their service to Krishna, those I do not know.
Thank you, Prabhu. Just a follow-up question on that. So when the visarga happens, or the annihilation of this, the total annihilation happens, the Mahapralaya, we read that this planet is not destroyed during the partial destruction or the total destruction. So my question is, when it is the next Brahma's time, or when it is the next day of Brahma, are all those citizens of the Dhruvaloka, they just stay there eternally and serve that Vishnu, or they go back to Godhead, just like in Brahmaloka, they get purified and they go back to spiritual world. So I'm thinking, how are the residents of Dhruvaloka, they are satisfied serving Vishnu, and this planet is never annihilated, and they are attached to that Vishnu and they serve eternally without going back to spiritual world, and they stay within the material world inside the spiritual planet. How does...
So an analogy that was given once to explain this a little better was, you can consider this to be like an embassy or a consulate. Like, countries, they have embassies in other countries, and their embassies are considered to be non-different from the country. They don't belong to the country where they are. They are actually belong to the country that they represent. So same way, Shwetadweep and Lord Vishnu, of course, he's eternally spiritual. So it is the spiritual world making itself available in the material realm, but does not mean that it becomes subject to the material laws of destruction or debilitation, etc. So they're fully spiritual. When they get destroyed, when the material world gets destroyed, it does not affect them because they're spiritual. Same point is made. Prabhupada would say about Vrindavan. Vrindavan is spiritual. It's in the material world, but when the material universe is destroyed, then Vrindavan does not get destroyed. It is, it still remains. I think you're thinking a little bit more about the mechanics of the whole thing. That if the earth gets destroyed, then does that 84 crores of land, does that get preserved somehow and it gets teleported to some other dimension? I don't know the details of that, and maybe we will never know unless we experience it. But at least qualitatively, we can understand that the nature of the spiritual entities or or spiritual paraphernalia is they're not subject to material destruction. I mean, look at the jivas, right? Look at this. Look at us. That we have a soul that is there in the material world. When the material world gets destroyed, we don't get destroyed. Now, in our case, we have a little bit better understanding what happens. That in a subtle body, we go into the body. First, when there is partial destruction, we go into the body of Brahma. If there is more complete destruction, we go into the body of Mahavishnu. And then we come back again later on. So we have a little better understanding. We don't have, or at least I don't have the clarity of what happens to places like Vrindavan and Dhruvaloka. But from a qualitative perspective, we can understand that they're not subject to the material laws of debilitation and destruction.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Shambhuji. Sorry, I got dropped off from Zoom earlier.
Is it because it's very cold in Chicago?
I think it's because of my past impious activity too. So Prajit, my question is on 1626, the verse that we stopped on. So Narad Muni is talking about ignoring all formalities of the material world. Like, he was chanting and everything. So what are the what does he mean by formalities of the material world?
So formalities of the material world in this context means that so if you look at the activities that Narad Muni was performing, he was performing the activities of Paradharma. So the formalities of the material world are enunciated by the rules and regulations of dharma, which is essentially varnashram dharma. So we don't see Narad Muni doing any purificatory samskars. So the 9 activities that he relates, they're completely in the realm of purely spiritual activities. Namani antasya pathan guyani badrani smraran. So these are all spiritual activities that he was performing, and he did not bother with the rules and regulations of the that are enunciated in dharma, or or more specifically varnashram dharma.
So how do we know, Prabhu? Like, when are we? Because in this, it seems like he was still on this practicing or sadhaka stage, and but he was he was not following varnashram system. So, how did he know basically not to whether?
Well, that's a good question, and that comes from the previous verse. Like when Narad Muni says, based on the instructions of Krishna, he was asked to do two things. One was to increase the desire for Krishna, and that was because of Krishna's brief darshan. And the second was complete his devotional service. And Krishna says that even by brief service to the sattvats. So Prabhupada translates that to that he completed his spiritual service by executing the instructions of the Bhakti Vedantas. So it's not that Narad Muni was doing this whimsically, that on his own he was just moving around at different places and doing his own thing. He was doing what he was asked to do. That's why we say that the 9 things that Narad Muni says he is doing reveal the instructions that were given to him by the Bhakti Vedantas.
Okay, bro. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yeah, so I just had one question regarding the remembrance and forgetfulness. So how is it that, so many at least for my experience, you could go so many years without all of that until you meet a devotee, and then that's when you come into the process and it is like everything just comes back to you. So what happened between all those years? Like you didn't remember anything.
So you never not remember. It is always there, but it is nation. Prabhupada compares this with Arnaki wood. That just like there is fire in the Arnaki wood, and it needs a spark to be set ablaze. So all those realizations, all the hankering, they're all there, and we experience them in different ways. If you scratch a devotee deep enough, you will inevitably, and you will see that in your own life, that you will inevitably see these hankerings express themselves in different ways. Maybe puzzlement, maybe detachment from material success, or maybe questioning, the value of things around you. All devotees, they go. When we hear the Prabhupada disciples talk about their own experiences, one thing that is common in all of them is that they were all searching. They were searching when before they met Prabhupada, and when Prabhupada met, they felt that the search was fulfilled. So they were searching because of this impetus that was implanted in them by virtue of the previous lives. In the 6th chapter, Krishna makes this point about the yogis, right? That the unsuccessful yogi, in his later life, and he says, what's the verse? He says that that when the unsuccessful yogi in the next life is reminded, and then he quickly resumes his devotional service. So that reminder is the mercy that we are waiting for. That is a spark, and ultimately it's Krishna's mercy coming through his devotee. But the fact that we catch that spark and fan it into a fire is because of all the fuel that we've accumulated in our past lifetimes.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Good questions. Okay, so we're a little bit over time. Sorry about that. So we'll end over here, and hopefully I'll see you all next week from India. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Have a safe trip, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully it'll be warmer there.
Definitely.